Hello, welcome back to Teen Story Share. This week we're continuing Mirror Girls by Kelly McWilliams. If you missed the last few weeks of reading, those will be linked down below. You'll definitely want to watch those first if you have not. This is going to be our last week of reading this book, so if you'd like to find out what happens after this, you can check it out at the library. We'll be starting a brand new book in November. If you have been following along, you will already know that this book takes place in 1950s Georgia, with some flashbacks to the 30s. So it does contain some outdated language. Also, in one of the chapters we're reading today, there is a description of a lynching. It's not graphic, but it is in there. It's a flashback to something that happened in the 30s in their town. This chapter does also contain a short reference to child abuse, physical abuse, just so you know. Chapter 6, Magnolia. Anna May was not always a horror. When we were children, we used to sneak off to skip stones with two Negro girls. There didn't seem to be much difference between us. And then, suddenly, there was all the difference in the world. One day, Anna May didn't feel like skipping stones. She wanted to throw them at our friends instead. I held back her arm. Lord, but she was strong. After, she told me she'd had a talk with her mother. Did I know coloreds weren't clean? Did I know they were evil since Cain? Did I know if white and colored mixed, they'd birth monsters? That night, I ran into Odessa's arms, her mouth twisting as I recounted those lies. She rocked me, countering every poisoned arrow. Colored folk are just the same as whites. The story of Cain is a lie. Whenever there's love, the world begins to heal. Living in a small town, I had no choice but to remain friendly with Anna May Whalen. No choice, even, but to sign the petition for a segregated cemetery. After all, every other girl in town did sign it. Wouldn't it have been strange if Magnolia Heathwood did not? In Eureka, there's nothing worse than looking like an integrationist. Since the Confederacy lost the war, Eureka's been frozen in amber. In this town, you have to go along to get along. Or perhaps I am simply a coward. Outside Anna May's house, her younger siblings play flashlight tag by moonlight. Anna May and I used to play flashlight tag too, during her parents' parties. Sometimes we even spent the night in her yard, slapping mosquitoes and whispering dreams. Jackson, Anna May's 10-year-old brother, waves to me. He already looks so much like Finch. I smile. Then a stray beam catches his profile, revealing garish yellow bruises ringing his right eye. His father always did have a temper. Jackson's bruises feel like a bad omen, but it's too late to turn back. I straighten my black skirt and ring the doorbell. You made it! Anna May squeals. Heavens to Betsy, y'all! Magnolia is here! The faces of my friends are so familiar it hurts. There's Leela and Susie Gimble, the town gossips, and bird-like Annie Flake. Everyone sports pink pins, showing their support for the Junior White Women's Auxiliary, or JWWA for short. Anna May hands me a dish. I'm meant to wear a pin too. Furtively, I pocket it. I remind myself of grandmother's last words. Your place is here. I wish it were true, but these girls wouldn't want me if they knew the truth about my race. They have gathered to celebrate digging up bodies like mine. As usual, Anna May's decorated the party room within an inch of its life. At each table, she's constructed horribly whimsical centerpieces, miniature painted headstones tucked among barbed wire. I take my assigned seat beside Nellie Whalen, Anna May's mother. Fresh from the salon, her bottle blonde hair shines like spun gold. Magnolia, our Finch is coming home tonight. Did you hear? I'm sure the very first person he'll want to see is pretty little you. My mouth's dry as the creek in summer, recalling the kisses I shared with Finch, back when I believed myself white. If an upstanding southern gentleman like Finch ever discovered the truth, he could wish me dead. The Whalen housekeeper, Sandra, ferries a tray of hors d'oeuvres to our table. I push away the appetizers because they don't smell right. Could they possibly be rotten? Not hungry, sweetheart? My stomach twists. I am starving. Ever since grandmother's funeral, I have struggled to eat. I reckon it must be grief. Must be. Anime raps a gavel against her podium. Welcome, everyone! Now y'all know how important segregation is to our way of life, which is why I began the Segregated Internment Initiative. Anime launches into a too-long speech. Forks clink. People mutter. Truth is, none of the girls really cares about the Segregated Internment Initiative. They just want to stay on the right side of Anime. If you cross her, she's mean as a snake. My uncle, may he rest in peace, is buried next to some colored man. They're close enough their elbows could touch. He deserves better. We deserve better. Amen. Mrs. Whalen winks at me. I'm nauseated. Not once in my life have I ever stood up to Eureka's ugly race talk. Not once. Magnolia, are you all right? Excuse me, ma'am, I need the powder room. Alone in the bathroom, I splash my face with water. I try not to look into the mirror over the sink, but it seems I cannot help myself. Where my reflection ought to be, I see an ugly Rockwell print hanging over the toilet, the potpourri, and nothing else. Oh, foot. I'd hoped it was only the Heathwood mirrors playing tricks, but it seems I am not reflected in any mirrors, anywhere. I feel punched, strangely empty. Dangerous, too, like a girl with nothing to lose. Back in the party room, Anime props a map on the metal stand. I squint at it, then reel back. Dear God, they're building the new colored cemetery on swampland, out where floods swallow the earth half the year, the worst possible place for a cemetery. Why, Anime has done some ugly things in her life, but this takes the cake. You can't bury bodies in a swamp, not if you expect them to stay buried. Does Odessa have people out there? Will my mother also be reburied in that fly-infested wasteland? No, I blurt out. You can't put a cemetery there. Heads turn. Why, bless your heart, it's as good as done, Anime coos. They're exhuming bodies Thursday. That's swampland. If it rains, if there's a flood... A scream builds behind my tongue, imagining caskets washed up on lawns, bodies spread over Colored Town, like litter after a hurricane. For the first time since I have known my friend, I truly hate her. You have to stop this, Anime, and I mean now. Whispers sweep around the room. Magnolia, think of your grandmother. Can she truly rest in peace surrounded by Negroes? She's always lived with Negroes. So does everyone. So do you. You sound like an integrationist. I answer without thinking. I am not. Take it back. Then I remember and slump. Who in creation am I? What am I? Your place is here, grandmother said. But what loyalty do I owe the woman who kept my mother's name from me? I can't be here, I mumble. Ice creeps into Anime's eyes. Yes, I think you'd best go. Anime just kicked me out of her party, and the room is eerily quiet. Behind me, the kitchen brims with cemetery-themed cupcakes. They're decorated with black frosted letters spelling R.I.P. Oh, the food in this house reeks. It assaults me, that scent of spoil and rot. Sickened, I run for the door, crashing through the screen and onto the front lawn. My heart beats recklessly. Jackson, can I borrow a flashlight? He scratches his head, avoiding the nasty bruise. You want to play? Oh, but I do feel sorry for him. No, thank you. I'm taking a walk. He tosses me a flashlight, then scampers back to his friends. I hurry towards Cemetery Road. The sun sets over Eureka's 400-year-old longleaf pines, bathing them in crimson as the street lamps switch on. A colored man crosses to the other sidewalk to avoid me, just like always, though I didn't pay it much mind till now. The truth is, I have been sleepwalking through life. Coward. I am a coward. I sob aloud, but do not stop. It is not too late. I can still return to my thick, forgiving sleep, soft as cotton and just as white. With a few apologies, I could easily re-enter my life. Then, what? I have lost my reflection and my respect for my friends. I have even lost respect for myself. If I travel the road grandmother wished me to take, I will keep on losing things till the day I die. My mother's name is Marie Ann Yates. She was a colored housekeeper, and my father planned to marry her. She is buried in the cemetery Anime hopes to desecrate. Jackson's flashlight swinging at my side, I walk on. I could crawl over broken glass, through fire, to get where I'm going now. Chapter 7. Charlie. 3 days ago, I didn't believe in ghosts. I lived on a tree-lined street in the greatest city in the world, a city that's transforming in the year 1953, turning slowly like a sunflower toward justice. Back home, I took part in countless boycotts, union rallies, and civil rights demonstrations. After school, I dreamed of becoming like Ella Baker, the first woman president of the NAACP, fighting for the soul of the city. In Harlem, I felt strong, brave. Not anymore. Mama told me to fix what's been broken, but I don't know what that means. Don't know even if the woman I saw in the strange mirror was real. The gold-rimmed mirror gleams before me now, soaking up the dying light. It looks so out of place in this country cottage. Not for 1 second do I trust that murky portal to another world. I pick up Nana's cane. A knock startles me. I jump. Hello? Another knock. Jeanette Yates? It's Dr. Colt. I run to the door. 3 men stand on the porch, a doctor, a minister, and Darius. My eyes burn. You're too late. Nana she's... The doctor strides into the kitchen with his black bag. The preacher, Darius's father, follows behind. In Nana's room, Dr. Colt bends over my grandmother's body. No pulse. I cover my face with my hands, tears leaking through my fingers, even though I already knew. Mr. Lucien, a taller, sterner version of his son, touches my shoulder. I'm sorry for your loss, Charlene Yates. Be peaceful at heart, for Jeanette stands at heaven's gate, even now. But what if she doesn't? Nana said the veil would be thin, so long as her spirit hangs around. Nana might still be close. Please let her be here with me, just a little longer. With a practiced hand, Dr. Colt closes my grandmother's eyes. Would you like to say goodbye? I almost say no. I don't ever want to say goodbye to the woman who raised me, but everyone's waiting for me to do something. I bend to kiss Nana's cheek. She still smells of the train, of dust and heat. My grandmother didn't believe in happily ever after, but she believed in strength. Even dying, she marched me to the train station, suffered 2 days of heat and pain, and kept going. By the skin of her teeth, she made it to Eureka, not because it was her wish to die where she was born, but because in dying, she could help me. She thinned the veil so I could finally meet Mama. Nana performed a monumental act of love, a feat they ought to write about in history books, but only I will ever know the true strength of Jeanette Adeline Yates. Only me. Dr. Colt hands me 2 pennies. What are these for? Local tradition, fare for the ghost train. Put them on your grandmother's eyes. I lay the copper coins on Nana's eyelids, then I tuck the quilt around her sides. Preacher Lucien prays, Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. I'm still hanging on to Nana's silver cane, clutching it to my chest. I don't feel like a young woman of 17 anymore, only like a little girl who needs her grandmother. Darius makes a noise low in his throat and crosses the distance between us. His eyes ask if it's okay to come close. I nod and he pulls me into an embrace. His arms, though I've only just met him, feel protective. Her favorite hymn was Swing Low, Sweet Chariot. I speak into Darius's shoulder. She used to sing it in the kitchen. Always wore a hat and gloves to step outside, too. I could never talk her out of it. Wish I hadn't nagged her. It's all right, Charlie. Dr. Colt lays a white lace handkerchief over Nana's face. The preacher bows his head to pray. Grief presses down on my shoulders, my head, heavy spirit hands, dragging me into the ground. In the circle of Darius's arms, I let my sobs come, loud and hard. You are not alone here, Preacher Lucien says, consoling me at the kitchen table. In Eureka, we look out for our own. But I'm not from Eureka. I'm from New York, and I want to go home. Don't mean to raise my voice. I'm only wounded, hurt. You are from Eureka, Dr. Colt says. I delivered you here, saw you take your first breath. You're of the soil. I can't help but think of Mama, her wedding gown, soaked and dripping. Fix what's been broken. Preacher Lucien, who killed my parents? Does anyone know? Silence hangs heavy as a shroud. A little boy discovered your parents' bodies in the river. Later, we found their car in a field. Nobody knows anymore. My parents were going to get married. Yes, they never made it, but on your mother's death certificate, we listed her as wife. Inscribed it on her headstone, too. I grip Nana's cane, cobra teeth scoring my palm. Lucien, Dr. Colt says sternly, we've got to tell her. I straighten. Tell me what? Preacher and doctor exchange a glance, but Darius's eyes are on me, watching me like I might break. Preacher Lucien clears his throat, settling in for a story. The summer before I went to seminary, I worked on the white side of town, roofing houses. A boy named Don Bell worked alongside me. He had skin the color of wheat and hair just as fair. At a distance, you'd think, that's a white man. Of course, he wasn't, or he wouldn't have died the way he did. I don't see what this has to do with... Hush, Dr. Colt tugs his ear. Listen. Roofing's hard work. The preacher's voice ripples across Freedom House's walls like stones skipped over water. Hot shingles burn the skin right off your hands. Once we worked for a white woman who pretended, whenever Don was around, that she wasn't married. She called him down every hour for a drink of ice-cold lemonade. The woman believed him white, called him my boss man, Mr. Bell. Being young and dumb and flattered, Don never corrected her. Apprehension creeps into my belly. It's not right to interrupt a man of God, but I don't want to hear this. Skin the color of wheat and hair to match, Dr. Colt murmurs. That's how it was. And what happened to him, John? I'm ashamed to say I looked at Don with hell's own envy. White woman never offered me lemonade, not so much as a glass of water. It was 1935, Dr. Colt intones. White woman'd rather burn her finest china than touch a glass after you. And my throat parched and aching. It's a familiar rhythm, this back and forth. Old men talk the same way on porch stoops in Harlem, endlessly repeating their horror stories. So, there I was, staring down at the two of them, brick cooking my knees like hog meat. Wished it were me with that skin like wheat. Me. Careful what you wish for, careful. I saw it all on the rooftop on a hot day in July. The white woman kissed Don full on the mouth. Shocked me so bad I slid off the roof, nearly broke my leg. Don lifted me into his arms, cradling me like a baby, telling me I was going to be okay. Finally, the woman got it through her thick skull that Don wasn't white, but colored. She turned green as pea soup. I saw it. Well, Don and I beat it out of there fast as rabbits. Didn't dare wait for our pay. But you can't outrun destiny, Dr. Colt murmurs. Not in a small town. God's will, his plan, in all its mystery. Beyond the kitchen window, the dark's rife with sound, frogs, crickets, wind whistling through the pines. This has nothing to do with me, I say. So, then the phone calls begin. White woman told her husband a colored roofer attacked her, said she couldn't go to church on Sunday for shame. And her husband told the grocer, who told the butcher, who told the sheriff's deputy, and all those white men waited until nightfall to ride up on Colored Town. Don't they always? Yes, doctor, they surely do. To this day I remember the smell of horse flesh and leather and the sound of his mama's shouts, because Don Bell wasn't yet 17. Like a fool, I ran into the street. Dr. Colt clucks his tongue. Nearly got yourself killed. But for the grace of God, doctor, one of the hooded men trained his rifle on me. I shut my eyes, but the rifle jammed. It wouldn't shoot. Don wasn't so lucky. They strung him up not a quarter mile from here, Charlene. The shock of it sent your mama into labor before her time. Dr. Colt was only a medical student, but he stepped up while your mama birthed the two of you." It takes me a minute to catch up to the preacher's words. The two of you. And Mama's ghost said I had a sister. Darius looks at me with pity now. He's heard this story before. How does it make any kind of sense that Darius Lucian knows more about my family history than I do? "While Don was dying, your mother birthed twins," Dr. Colt says. "I'd never delivered a child before, and my hands were just a-shaking and a-trembling because Don was my friend too." "Fortunately, Jeanette Yates knew about birth," the preacher says. "Sure did. She knew when to tell your mama to hold off, when to push. Your mama kept screaming for your daddy, just wailing for him. He'd gone away on business, but he was supposed to be home soon. Odessa ran to Heathwood plantation, searching, but your daddy wasn't there. The woman who came, in the end, was your other grandmother, Charlene. Blanche Heathwood." My nostrils flare at that word. Heathwood. "Find your sister," Mama said. "She died," I say, horrified. "That other baby. She's dead, right?" "No," Preacher Lucian says. "But she was milk white, that child." "When your mother birthed y'all, it was like a miracle." Dr. Colt speaks wonderingly. "One child so light, the other brown." "Charlene, I witnessed the hunger in Blanche Heathwood's eyes. She coveted that baby. It was the mere image of what God saw in my own eyes when I begrudged Don Bell that ice-cold lemonade." Outside, an owl hoots, ghostly. Freedom House's shadows have thickened around us, like the walls are listening. "So my daddy, he was rich?" Dr. Colt nods. "The heir to Heathwood plantation itself." "How could he love my mother if he was who you say he was?" "Well, they were young. Their love was a force of nature. Couldn't nothing stop it, not rains nor hurricane." "A force of nature, that it was," the preacher repeats. "Blanche Heathwood offered Jeanette $500 for the light-skinned baby. Your mama was still shivering, delivering the afterbirth, but Mrs. Heathwood opened her alligator skin wallet and flashed those crisp green bills, like we were still in slave times and a baby was something you could up and buy. Well, Jeanette told the white woman to get out of her house. Mrs. Heathwood spat in her face, called her names. We thought we'd seen the last of her, but a week after your mama and daddy both turned up dead." A headache grips my skull. Mama and daddy dead. "1 week later," Preacher Lucian goes on, "Blanche Heathwood walked through the door for the second and final time. Again she opened her alligator skin purse. Again your Nana shook her head no. I was there, helping your grandmother through her grief. Politely I asked Mrs. Heathwood to leave Jeanette Yates alone. Let her raise up her grandchildren in peace." "Oh, Nana, what did you do?" "I know Nana," I say. "Not in a million years would she have sold a child." "At first, she held strong." Preacher Lucian's voice drops an octave. "But then, Blanche Heathwood spoke the 2 words that finally broke her. Don Bell." I jump out of my chair. "Stop! I don't want to hear any more." An amber globe lamp pops, shattering. Dread loops around my spine. "Freedom House doesn't take kindly to strangers," Nana said. "Sit down, Charlene," the preacher booms. "Stories not told." Like a marionette on strings, I sit. And I look to Darius. I want to ask him to stop all this, to help, but a tiny window in my throat slams shut. Shame. I can't breathe for shame, though I can't say what shames me exactly. Nana's sin? My own ignorance? Or my lily-white sister? Nana must have given her up because the light child was safer with a white family. Being light-skinned means you can straddle the color line, and that could be dangerous. I know in part because I'm relatively light, a pecan color, Nana always said. I know what the preacher's trying to tell me. Don Bell died because though his skin was light, his soul was colored. What color is my sister's soul? Does she know who she is, or who she's supposed to be? Now then, the preacher continues, Blanche Heathwood paid Jeanette for passage north, and for her oath of secrecy, but no human oath binds me. Only a few colored folk in Eureka know who your sister is, and we never speak of her. She lives like a white heiress, ignorant, but we don't begrudge her ease. No, Dr. Colt intones, we don't begrudge it. Finally, I've had enough. This town is filthy with secrets, sick. Before I came here, my life made sense, fit perfectly inside the grid of New York City streets. This swampy mess, I don't want any part of it. Charlene, Dr. Colt leans forward. Would you like to know your sister's name? I can't think of anything I want to know less, because that would make my sister real, someone I'd have to live with for the rest of my life. Please, just leave me alone. The three men share worried looks. She's family, Charlene, Darius says. Don't you want a chance to know her? I wish I'd never come to Eureka. Wish all these horrible secrets had stayed right where they belong, buried. I stand tall. All of you, please go home now. Charlene, I said get out! My own voice, like glass shattering, shocks me. All right, soothes Dr. Colt. Coroner will be here in the morning. The preacher leaves, then the doctor, then Darius. He's frowning, disappointed, but I don't care. I came to Eureka for Nana's sake, but I never signed up for long-lost sisters or gothic mysteries. I don't want any part of this southern fried evil. Shaking, I slam the front door. Mama said, fix what's been broken. But how can I, in a town as cursed as this? Soon as the coroner claims Nana's body, I'm catching the next train north. All right, I hope you've enjoyed these first few chapters of Mirror Girls. And if you are intrigued by the story, this book will be available for checkout at the library. Have a good weekend, and I'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.